social services, but that is not my primary concern. I have two primary concerns when it comes to the Syrian refugees. One is obviously the fact that we can't screen them. And despite the Obama administration's protestations, that yes, we have beautiful vetting procedures, right? The same vetting procedures that got you Major Nidal Hassan, the same vetting procedures that got you the Chattanooga, Tennessee shooter, the same vetting procedures that got you the Sarnia brothers, right? All of these vetting procedures, they say that they're going to do biometric scans, which are completely useless unless you actually have physical evidence of these people committing criminal acts elsewhere, right? You have nothing to scan them against. It's like saying they're going to fingerprint these folks. Well, unless you have fingerprints at a crime scene somewhere else, that doesn't make any difference. They say that they're going to interview them. What does that interview look like? I mean, really, what is that? They say apparently the people doing the interviews have 8 days of training on Syria, and then they're thrown right in. They say that they're going to do background checks. By calling whom? Who do you actually call? Do you call Bashar Assad and ask him for his information? Right? So it's nonsensical. People on Homeland Security Committee know this is nonsensical. Today, the House passed a bill curbing Syrian immigration after Homeland Security came and made a presentation. They actually lost votes after the Homeland Security presentation. So that's one issue. The other issue is, what is the nature of the immigrants that you're bringing in, period? And this is not a religious issue, it's a values issue. Are the people who you're bringing in going to make the country a better place, or are they going to make the country a more polarized place? Do they have any experience with Western-style democracy? Do they believe in any of the same American rights that we believe in, or not? And that's a very relevant question to ask about any immigrant and any class of immigrants. Now, do I think it's stupid to say you're not going to bring in 5-year-old orphans? Yes, I think that's dumb. But do I think that it's not stupid to say you ought to look at the values of the people that you're bringing in? I would say that about people of any religion. And the fact is that when you're talking about people who are coming from a place like Syria, which has no history of democracy, no history of human rights, no history of basic American rights like freedom of speech, no idea of what equality of sexes looks like, there's going to be a culture clash. Look at Europe. Europe is full of culture clash because of the vast wave of Muslim immigration. So on those two levels, I'm extremely worried about the Syrian refugee wave. And by the way, question for the Ummah, right, the Muslim nation that is supposed to take everybody in. There are 1 billion Muslims on planet Earth, and there are 52 Islamic majority countries on planet Earth. None of you have room for these folks? None of you? Right? Turkey is taking in about 2 million of them. 15% are still in refugee camps. The truth is that the Ummah has a pretty poor record of taking in refugees. Right? For all the talk about how it's the Israelis who are victimizing the Palestinians, for example, there are still, 70 years later, 10 refugee camps in Jordan. There are 13 refugee camps full of Palestinians in Syria. There are refugee camps in the south of Lebanon for Palestinians 2 generations after the creation of Israel. By contrast, Israel has taken in every wave of Jewish refugees that has ever existed. So you know, I'm getting tired of hearing the sort of unearned moral superiority of the Muslim world when it comes to, oh, you Westerners, you have to take our refugees.
Could you please explain the unholy alliance between the left and the forces and the Muslim supremacists, considering that the premises and the principles of both of them are mutually incompatible?
Okay, so they're not mutually incompatible to point A, they are to point B. What I mean is that it's a timeline. The left wants to tear down Western civilization because it thinks it's unequal. The radical Muslims want to tear down Western civilization because they think it's evil. So to the point of tearing down Western civilization, they're pretty much on the same page. It's where they go from there that's a problem, right? One side wants to build a caliphate and the other side wants to build a communist utopia. The reason that the left is routinely, and it's almost invariable, that the left ends up siding with the world's worst human beings in every situation is because, again, if you just go back to that fundamental leftist principle that equality of outcome is all that matters in life, that equality of outcome means that something just is happening, think about it. The real world is a place where God designed it this way. I believe this. God designed it not for every individual, but certainly for the vast bulk of humanity. If you do responsible good things with your life, you will be more successful than if you do irresponsible bad things with your life. Well, if the left believes that people who are unsuccessful are more virtuous, then what that means is that the non-virtuous are more virtuous, right? Because the people who are unsuccessful are generally not doing good, responsible things, and the left says, well, those people are victims, let's help them. Right? So the Muslims in the Middle East are victims of Israel. They must be victims of Israel because Israel's rich, and its neighbors are not. So they must be victims. Well, the real reason that the Muslims, the Palestinian Muslims, for example, are poor is because they've spent all the money that has been given to them, hundreds of billions of dollars, all the money that's been given to them over the course of decades, and they've spent it on terrorism, and they've spent it on stocking it away in their bank accounts of Yasser Arafat and Mahmoud Abbas, and they've spent it on garbage, and they spent it on anti-Israel propaganda. That's the real reason they're poor. But the left looks at it and they say, they're poor. That means they're virtuous. This is why I hate it, really despise it, when Republicans do the whole, I'm a better person because I have a rags to riches story. You weren't a better person when you're poor. Okay, no one is a better person just because they're poor. By the way, no one's a better person because they're rich. All that wealth is a measure of how many voluntary exchanges you engaged in a free market. That's all that wealth is. But the idea for the left is that all inequality is evil. Therefore, the people who are unequal at the top are evil and the people at the bottom are virtuous. Which is why you'll hear people on the left say things like they like small business, but they hate people who are big business, like the Walmart family, right? The Walton family. They're terrible. Well, were they terrible when they were just a family living in the middle of nowhere? When exactly did they transition over into evil? Right? When they became successful enough, because their success meant, by necessity, according to the leftist worldview, they were depriving others of their fair share. And Bernie Sanders said this right after winning New Hampshire the other night. And this is Bernie Sanders' entire thing. He says the principle of America is the principle of fairness, which makes me want to vomit and never stop vomiting. The principle of America is not fairness of outcome. And he was talking about fairness of outcome. He said, oh, how it's unfair that 1% of the population lives with more wealth than 90% of the rest of the population. And well, maybe, or maybe it's not unfair, because it turns out that 1% of the population is hiring the other 90% of the population to actually provide their services and labor. So my feeling about illegal immigration, the idea that illegal immigration...
So you support his immigration policies, you're just worried he's not deeply convicted enough to them?
At least in part. I disagree with him on H-1B visas, because high-tech visas bring in people who actually are capable of doing work and not taking taxpayer dollars, but people who are coming in who are lower income and living off the taxpayer. California economics proves this. Okay, if you bring in millions and millions of people who, and not because they're bad people, it's not nothing to do with bad. The people who are coming in are looking for...
No, they're not bad, they're just stealing our jobs.
No, by the way, hold on. This is where I think that Trump is an idiot. I'm not saying that they're rapists. Don't mischaracterize what I'm saying, because you're talking about what Trump is saying. Okay, my view is that in a perfectly welfare state-free society, open borders and free movement of labor is totally fine. It's the Milton Friedman position. The problem is when you give out welfare, when you give out free education, when you give out Obamacare, when you give out food stamps, and then you say to people, my front door is wide open, a lot of people are going to come in and they're going to take advantage of the system, which is what's happening in the state of California.
I'm not accusing you, like, I'm not like saying, oh, and you bigot, right? But I am
You're
talking about,
the argument
well,
I'm
I'm talking about
That's
a
nonsense.
policy and a practice in our country. Look, we happen to have this anti-immigrant surge at this moment in our country. You know, and I don't know if you've been to other panels, but if you've been watching the conversation, this isn't about, it's like, oh, well, we had the Irish and Italian immigrants, those were good immigrants, right? They came and they didn't, right? And they worked hard and they were the good immigrants, but now they're bad immigrants, right? If people are talking about they don't like immigrants who are moving into their community, changing the culture of their community, this is very much connected to Donald Trump. Look, this is the point of the whole friggin' debate. Right? You don't have to, you can rationalize it. You can rationalize it in policy. You can say, yes, this is about not giving away government benefits to immigrants. But guess what? Your party also is the party that wants to cut those benefits. So it becomes an illogical argument to say, well, hey, we want to cut the benefits, but the fact that we have the benefits is our argument for not letting people in this country.
No, it's not illogical at all. I want to cut the benefits, and then if you won't cut the benefits, then people can't come in and take them for free.
It is
not illogical at all.
In 2008...